The really frustrating thing with this, look at the scale between the whole inches. What do you notice that's weird about the scale? Think about what we learned about yesterday about the measuring tape. Remember how the measuring tape was divided into sixteenths?
Yeah, now it's
right? Now we go back to being divided into tenths. And then those tenths are divided differently than an SI ruler, right? Usually there's 10 thingies in between, and now there's 4, right? So, let's give this a try, okay? There are 4 readings that you take from an from an imperial caliper.
Oh boy.
There are 3 that you take from SI, but 4 from imperial, okay? And just like with SI calipers, all but the last reading come from this top scale here, right? You kind of just imagine this as a regular ruler, just for a moment, right? And then you take your final reading from the moving scale at the bottom. Okay, so we're going to treat our first 3 readings as if this was just a regular ruler, and then the last one we'll take from the moving scale, what they call the vernier scale. All right, so we're going to measure the whole inches first, okay, and then the tenths of an inch, and then this sounds really strange. This is where we start dealing with the space in between the tenths. Quarters of a tenth of an inch. I'll explain why that is in a moment. And then we do thousandths of an inch. Okay. So again, we base our reading on where this 0 line falls on the fixed scale or the main scale. You with me? Okay. So how many whole inches does this 0 line fall after? 3. Okay, so that's the number of whole inches that I have, right? Good. How many tenths of an inch? That's this second
3
row here. How many tenths of an inch? It'd be 3 tenths. And remember, it's not 3/16ths, kind of like we had last day, right? This is divided into 10 main sections between the 3rd and the 4th inch. Okay, and I know it's kind of weird that they do it for the caliper and not for the regular ruler, but just got to remember that. Okay, so we have 3 tenths of an inch, so that'll be, we'll just write it as 0.3. We'll just add them all at the end. Quarters of a tenth of an inch. So here's where it gets weird. Okay, you can see that this line, sorry, not that line, this space here, the space between the 3rd and 4th inch, remember how much of a distance is that again? It's a tenth of an inch. That tenth of an inch is divided into how many pieces? 4. Right? You just look in between these 2 red lines. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So each of these lines represents a quarter of a tenth of an inch. Does that make sense? And I know it's weird. Okay? But it represents a quarter of a tenth of an inch. So how many quarters of a tenth of an inch does this 0 line fall after?
2.
2 quarters of a tenth of an inch, and then a little bit, right? And that little bit is determined from the moving scale. Okay. First, let's just figure out how much a quarter of a tenth of an inch is, and then we'll double it to get 2 quarters of a tenth of an inch. Am I saying that too fast?
It's okay.
Quarter of a. You understand what I mean, though?
Yeah.
Right? You have a tenth of an inch divided into 4.
Yeah.
So therefore they're quarters of a tenth. Okay. Of, typically in math, means to do what operation? Do you remember? If I wanted to find like a third of 100, you divide. No.
Wait, no, multiply?
Multiply, right? Of usually means to multiply.
What's the one for divide?
Goes into. How many times does this go into that? Usually that means divide. Okay, so a quarter of, so multiply, a tenth would be 1/4 times 1/10. Right? And when you multiply fractions, what's that trigger again? You guys learned last year, remember? Don't forget.
Top times top, bottom.
Yes, thank you. Top times top, bottom times bottom. So that would be 1/40. And give me the decimal form of that. What'd you get? 0.025. Okay, so here's something hopefully that can make reading imperial calipers a little bit easier. If you can remember that number, 0.025, and remember that it's the distance between each of these ticks, that will go a long way to helping you read these calipers. That's basically just how I remember it, is that each of these distances here is 0.025 inches. Right? And since I have 2 tenths that I'm concerned about in my reading, I would just double that amount. So if you can just remember that number, then it'll make the readings go a lot simpler. If you can't remember the number, just remember that this is a tenth and you need a quarter of it, so take a quarter and multiply by a tenth and you can get that decimal number again. Okay? So I have 2/4 of a tenth of an inch, so therefore I need to take 0.025 and double it. Oh, not 10. So what does that give you?
0.05.
0.05. Okay? So that's 2/4 of a tenth of an inch. That's just this distance right here. Follow? And you can see we've got a little bit left to base our reading on, and that's where the last scale comes in. Okay, so this will be 0.05. Now the last reading is thousandths of an inch. Okay? So the numbers on here on the moving scale, or the vernier scale, indicate thousandths of an inch. And they go quite high. They go from not only 5 to 10, but beyond 10, right, to 15, 20, and 25. And just like we did with SI calipers, you have to look at where on the moving scale a line first matches with a line up on the fixed scale.
15.
Remember that? And I know they pointed at it. Just pretend they did it. Okay, so I know they point. We'll just ignore the fact that they pointed at it. And let's just look, okay? So at 0, does it match?
No.
No. First one?
No.
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 No. No. No. Really monotone. Here we go. No. 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 Oh, it's close.
No.
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 No. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Think so?
Or you know, that might be a little bit ahead.
This blur is a little bit further to the right than the other blur. But at 15, definitely. And you can see once we get to 16, the bottom one here is just slightly to the left. Right? But even if there was something after 15 that did match, we wouldn't care. We only look for the first match between the moving scale and the fixed scale. Follow? Okay. So remember what I said. This bottom scale here represents thousandths of an inch. Here's my challenge. How do you write 15 thousandths of an inch as a decimal?
15 divided by 1,000?
Yeah, 15 divided by 1,000. Good. Okay, so 15 thousandths of an inch. What is that in decimal form? 0.015. Yeah, don't forget that at the 0. That matters, right? So there we go. We got 4 readings. We got 3 whole inches, 3/10 of an inch, 2/4 of a tenth of an inch, and 15 thousandths. All we do now is we just add all 4 of those readings together. Okay, and that gives us our total measurement. Okay, so we have 3 plus 0.3 plus 0.05 plus 0.015, all added together. What does that give you? So it looks like I had it right before. 3.365?
Yeah.
Is that right? I can really hear my voice now. Okay, good.